So we had an academic, Steven Pinker, on the podcast. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah.
His basic position is that it's not actually inequality, which primarily matters for welfare, but actually basically the minimal state of the standard of living. And then you can have basically a high ceiling.
Yes.
So long as we provide that minimum.
The minimum safety net, yeah.
Yes.
It's a great example of what I was saying earlier about if you could have taken me and adopted me and put me,
Right.
It's not Steven Pinker's fault that he grew up where he grew up, but he grew up in a place where that's widely believed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite interesting that academics, so we've had great ideas and so on, but that's the basic liberal USA idea of just provide a minimum for the poor and everything else will be okay.
Yeah. So basically my question is, you think that actually welfare is maybe not directly correlated, but very, very strongly correlated with the inequality for economic reasons as well, based on the general proportion of wealth that poor people have as well. So maybe you could provide some kind of counter argument to Steven Pinker's view on an economic level first.
Well, the country he's based in, where he says this is all you need to do, has one of the worst infant mortality rates in the rich world, the lowest life expectancy, worst problem with drugs, highest number of people in prison, more than all the other countries of the rich world put together, eviction rates, however many millions of people sleeping rough in cars. Oh, before you start worrying about guns, which are, the main problem with guns in the US is people shooting themselves. I mean, we worry about gun crime, but actually most of the deaths are if you fill a country with guns. And the amazing thing about the US is that even the richest 1% don't live longer than the richest 1% here, and our richest 1% don't live as long as in mainland Europe, and far more equitable, and just overwhelming. Then you could go, oh, it must be something else. It must be trust, and it's because people trust themselves more that they agree to more similar incomes. But over time, the evidence that inequality matters so the worry is become as accepted as something like eugenics was in the 1920s. By explaining that, I mean, it might not be right? This is the point about being a social scientist. You always assume you might be wrong. Eugenics, the idea that some people were bred to be clever and others not, and we had to stop the poor breeding, otherwise we're all going to become stupid. In the 1920s, that was believed by people on the left and the right. The founders of the Labour Party believed it. It was a theory that was incredibly popular around the world, and it was wrong.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that the theory that inequality is really, really bad because the correlations are so high might be wrong, and it might be a proxy for something else that really matters, or it might actually be that some people are quite able and most people aren't. We really need the able people to be in charge, and they're only going to be in charge if you pay them enough. I'm trying my best to, but you can't find an unequal country in the world. Well, there is one unequal country in the world in which people are doing relatively well and feel they're doing relatively well, and that's China. China is as unequal as the United States, but the thing about China is almost everybody knows that their grandparents were really poor and that they standard of living rose. And people in China are not yet worrying that much about the fact they've got multimillionaires amongst them, because they're able to do things that they couldn't imagine. And they sometimes go to the United States on holiday and come back and go, thank God I don't live in the USA. And
I might feel like that sometimes. I think when I went to, I had a friend who went to California recently, and he was telling me, about basically the extent of the opioid problem, the heroin problem in California.
I first went to San Francisco in 1995, so that's 30 years ago. And I remember the shock of stepping out over homeless body after homeless body, alive, people were alive, but I've never seen, because we didn't have that problem.
We don't have any homeless people in Malta, not one.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah, not one.
It's amazing.
No.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
But you haven't got trees either.
That's true.
Well, that's not to do, but never better. And the biggest shock, I went to the plenary session of Association of American Geographers big conference. The plenary session was on poverty, and there were only 6 people there. And I suddenly thought, oh, this is why things are so bad in America. They're just not interested in Because it had got to the point then of just seeing these people were losers. They were there because they hadn't tried. This is just how the world works. At least they're all clustered in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked hard. I deserve my mansion up on the hills above. And very strange society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea that, what is your basic safety net? Are you going to put them into hostels? Are you, whereas the kind of country the opposite country, maybe I'll try and make this last time I mention it, but Finland, I've written a book on Finland.
Yeah.
They have a problem of tens and tens of thousands of homeless people often drinking. And that was really problematic because they would die if they were outdoors in the winter, but they heat the toilets and the subway. So sleeping down there in public toilets. And the Finns decided to end homelessness and did, because they saw the other Finns as people.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of research showing that people in the US have stopped seeing homeless people as people when you scan their brains. And similar places like India, where the rich of India can look down and don't. Yeah. Because if you do see other people as people and they're suffering, it's very hard not to do anything about it.
That's the thing with homelessness. And again, I just want to clarify, there may be a small percentage of homeless people in Malta, but it really is so low, that percentage, when you come to Oxford and you see the people on the streets. Yeah. I think you mentioned this as well in something that you wrote, that when international students come to Oxford, unless they're American, they're surprised.
Yeah. Real shock. Well, I got a shock because I lived for 10 years in Sheffield, and there was a point in the north where I remember Newcastle was hardly any homeless people, partly because people are so friendly that if somebody tries to sit down on the street, people stop and ask them if they can help them. And there's lots of housing. But there was relatively little homelessness in Sheffield. And we came down, and one of my children was about 12, 13, and there was somebody begging. And he just stopped his bike to go and give him his pocket money. And I remember being utterly shocked and realizing, he's never seen this before. And not saying my child's particularly nice, it's just if you're a child and the first time you see somebody with a cardboard sign, whereas, we're completely used to it, to walk by, not to look, maybe make eye contact if you're nice and nod, and some nice people do give and you're told, it's all going to be. It's very easy. Very, very easy to get acclimatized into behaving in ways you would otherwise think was terrible. And there's lots of examples in history about terrible things done by very large numbers of people, and all it takes is not seeing other people as human.
This is Critical Edge, a community for discussion, learning, and questioning. We learn how to think, not what to think. From party politicians to professors to controversial business people, the list goes on. Dissecting ideologies and belief systems can be hard, and as we navigate worlds of culture, politics, and academia, we hope to bring you along. We're here to cut through the noise.
China now has a bigger economy than the United States.
I'm not following trails laid by my political opponents in various newspapers.
So what do you think about OpenAI, for example, and how they're dealing with questions of objectivity?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's been over a year since we started this podcast in this quad at Oxford University. But what started as just a bit of fun has turned into something much bigger.
No topic is off limits, no guest beyond scrutiny.
But we're more than just a podcast. We also release articles written by our peers every week from Oxford and from around the world.
If you're sick of platforms written by guests with contradictory opinions but challenge neither, then listen in. Ideas are sharper at the edge.